On January 21st, 1907, the British journalist and author Bertram Fletcher Robinson died in his London home at the young age of 36. Robinson was a successful and well-connected writer, counting Arthur Conan Doyle and P.G. Wodehouse among his friends. In the years leading up to his death, Robinson had become fascinated with a peculiar object in the British Museum. It was a wooden mummy board of a prominent Egyptian woman, possibly a priestess, though her identity remains unknown. In a front-page article for the Daily Express, Robinson details the string of bizarre incidents attached to the object, death and misfortune falling upon those who owned it. Then soon after, Robinson died. The official cause was typhoid, but after his death, rumors flourished about the mummy board. Some speculated that the object was cursed and played a role in Robinson's untimely demise. Robinson was interested in folklore, but he was otherwise a prolific journalist whose reporting mainly dealt with the here and now. How did someone like him become tangled up in a mummy's curse? Before there was King Tut, there was the unlucky mummy. It's a story that helps us to understand the social phenomenon of Egyptomania, and one that somehow involves everything from Sherlock Holmes to the sinking of the Titanic. I'm Nicole Miras, and this is Fireside Fables. One of the earliest episodes I did on Fireside Fables was about King Tutankhamun and the various curses and legends attached to that extraordinary archaeological discovery. But that wasn't the only time that ancient Egyptian artifacts were believed to be cursed. And to understand how this association developed, you have to know about Egyptomania. But first, if you are interested in weird stories from history, as well as folklore, ghost stories, and legends of other supernatural creatures, consider becoming a subscriber of Fireside Fables. Liking and subscribing makes a big difference and allows me to keep doing what I do. Today, I am having a delicious cup of rooibos tea, which I learned several weeks ago, thanks to some of you kindly letting me know that I had been saying that wrong for the past decade. One of these days, as this channel gets bigger, I am going to, at some point, make fireside mugs because I think that would be so cute. But for now, I have a little book person. It has a smiley face on the inside. Pour yourself a cup of something delicious and let's get into it. Egyptomania was a 19th century social phenomenon present across Europe and North America, but especially present in Britain and the United States, in which the public developed a fascination with ancient Egypt and an insatiable appetite for Egyptian artifacts, as well as a boom in contemporary decorative objects inspired by Egyptian design. Egyptomania was sparked by Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798, during which Lieutenant Pierre-François Bouchard and his soldiers discovered the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a stele, or an upright stone slab, featuring an inscription of a royal decree issued on behalf of King Ptolemy V Epiphanes in 196 BC. Part of the decree is missing, but its message was written by a council of priests in celebration of Ptolemy's coronation. What made an otherwise typical royal decree so significant was that its message was written in 3 different languages. On top was hieroglyphic script, followed by Demotic script and ancient Greek, which meant that for the first time, modern scholars would be able to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs. Soon, Western scholars, adventurers, and bureaucrats were scouring Egypt for antiquities, which were either purchased or stolen and brought back to Europe. It was a manic free-for-all, motivated both by nonfiction accounts of Egypt by Egyptologists and travel writers, as well as mass-market fiction that played on the ancient civilization's mystical aura, and even mummy unwrapping demonstrations before live audiences. By the late 1800s, the British Empire had effectively colonized Egypt. And you have these dueling attitudes. You have, on one hand, fascination and respect for the ancient civilization itself, and the colonizers' attitude that the remaining artifacts of that civilization were essentially theirs for the taking. This enthusiasm bled into the Egyptian revival of architecture and decorative arts, in which the artistic styles of ancient Egypt served as a source of inspiration for everything from public buildings and fountains to furniture, jewelry, picture frames, boxes, and more. Fueling this popular image of Egyptian culture was spiritualism, an occult movement of psychics, mediums, and believers that swept across both sides of the pond. We've talked about spiritualism before. As the public's interest in spiritualism grew, so did its appetite for anything adjacent to the occult. Ancient Egypt, with its mummies, Book of the Dead, and intricate mythology, was the perfect canvas on which contemporary Europeans and Americans could project their own fantasies. One of these individuals bitten by Egyptomania was Bertram Fletcher Robinson. What intrigued me about Robinson is that despite the fact that he's not terribly well known, he was very connected to many prominent Victorian and Edwardian figures. Robinson was born in 1870 in Liverpool and raised in Devon. His father was a merchant and the founder of Mead King Robinson and Company Limited, now MKR, which is actually still in operation in Liverpool today. His uncle, Sir John Richard Robinson, was the editor-in-chief of the Daily News. So Robinson very much came from this new money class of industrialists and entrepreneurs who had emerged as a powerful force in the UK thanks to the Industrial Revolution. He was passionate about writing, so rather than going in his father's direction, he followed in his uncle's footsteps and became a journalist. During his short life, he wrote dozens of short stories and held editorial positions in a variety of papers, including Vanity Fair, the Daily Express, and the Gentleman's Magazine. As a journalist, he was a war correspondent for the Second Boer War, and he reported on everything from sports to the changing landscape of Victorian city life. Okay, so where does the occult association come in? Robinson, as I mentioned earlier, had a circle of prominent and connected friends in the world of literature and publishing. One of those friends was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes series. I have a soft spot for Doyle. I love people who wear different hats and take on a variety of experiences throughout their lives, and Doyle had a fascinating life. He worked in everything from medicine to botany to politics and sports, and of course, the spiritualist movement. Doyle makes a lot of cameos on this show. If there is a ghost or a fairy or a mummy, he is writing about it. King Tut, the Cottingley fairies, you name it, it is fair game. But Robinson and Doyle weren't just friends. They were collaborators. Robinson, as I noted, wrote dozens of short stories, particularly murder mysteries, and he was a member of the Crimes Club. This was a private social club focused on criminology, basically a true crime fan club. It was founded by Doyle in 1903 and still remains in operation under the new name Our Society. Robinson not only wrote his own mysteries, but he also played an important role in the Sherlock Holmes story, The Hound of Baskerville. When asked about where he got the idea for the story, Doyle said that his friend, Bertram Robinson, told him about local legends of demonic hounds in Dartmoor, ghostly tales that proliferated in the region where Robinson had grown up. Historians debate how deep this collaboration went. Did Robinson just give Doyle the initial idea for the story, or did he play a larger role in developing its plot? In any case, the association with Doyle gave Robinson an occult aura, even though we don't really know what his beliefs on spiritualism were. This was, of course, coupled with the investigation that Robinson conducted on the mummy board itself. In 1904, 3 years before his death, Robinson published an article in the Daily Express called The Priestess of Death. He tells readers, "Facts I will presently relate are true, though whether they be a coincidence or a manifestation of supernatural power, who can say?" The story he shared in that article captivated his readers. He claimed that the object was purchased in the 1860s by a group of English travelers, who, like many affluent people at the time, were eager to visit the sites of ancient Egypt as tourists. The whereabouts of the mummy itself are unknown, but they decided to purchase the mummy board and take it back to England as a souvenir. Today, historians are unsure about the woman's identity, but at the time, researchers believed that she was a priestess of Amun-Ra. Shortly after, 2 of the men died before they ever made it out of Egypt. One was severely injured in a shooting, and another lost his entire fortune by gambling. The penniless gambler soon gave the mummy board to his sister, and the porter who delivered it died. Then the cameraman whom the sister hired to photograph it also died. The researcher who translated the hieroglyphs later took his life. The idea that Egyptian tombs or relics were cursed goes all the way back to ancient Egypt itself. Grave robbing was a problem all the way back then. And sometimes builders would inscribe curses or warnings on the walls of tombs to scare away thieves. But in the context of the Edwardian era, the idea that these objects were cursed carries a different cultural resonance. It expressed an underlying anxiety about Britain's colonial role, that they were messing with something that they shouldn't have. This is a complicated subject because by this period there existed an antiquities market in Egypt with Egyptian dealers, but provenance for these objects was often murky at best. The Freakonomics podcast did a series about antiquities trafficking a few years back, and this issue still remains a problem today. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll link that below. Anyway, 3 years after publishing the Daily Express article, Robinson died at a tragically young age. The Titanic element came a couple years later. The iconic journalist W.T. Stead died aboard the ship, and he was someone who had also reported on alleged Egyptian curses. W.T. Stead, as a side note, was a hugely important campaigner on behalf of children's rights. His investigative reporting shed light on the underbelly of child prostitution in London and forced the government to intervene. The Stead Act, which raised the age of consent in the UK from 13 to 16, was named after him. But Stead's association with mummies got tangled up in the narrative surrounding the mummy board. New rumors developed that the mummy board was on the Titanic, and the angry spirit of the priestess caused the ship to hit the iceberg. This is in spite of the fact that the mummy board was at the British Museum and had been for years. In fact, the first time it left the museum was for an exhibit in the 1990s. And of course, Arthur Conan Doyle played his role in fueling speculation about the curse, as he did with King Tut. Shortly after Lord Carnarvon's death in 1923, Doyle drew parallels to Robinson's death in 1907. In a comment published in the Daily Express, he said, "It is impossible to say with absolute certainty if this is true. If we had proper occult powers, we could determine it, but I warned Mr. Robinson against concerning himself with the mummy at the British Museum. He persisted, and his death occurred. I told him he was tempting fate by pursuing his enquiries. The immediate cause of death was typhoid fever, but that is the way in which the elementals guarding the mummy might act. They could have guided Mr. Robinson into a series of circumstances as would lead him to contract the disease, and thus cause his death. Just as in Lord Carnarvon's case, human illness was the primary cause of death." We often think of folklore as being something from long ago, tales from the forest primeval passed down over centuries. And while plenty of folklore is indeed hundreds of years old, the story of Bertram Robinson shows us how folklore is always being written, and how various strands of public speculation, social trends, and mysticism can create new legends at any time. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for a future video. Be well, and I'll see you next time.